the unseen, where we do our work. Go into your prayer closet, into your secret place, shut the door behind you, and the God that sees you in secret will reward you openly. There's a level of work that I do there first, because there's a tendency to immediately react in the natural, in the flesh, you understand? Mm-hmm. But that limits you, right? Because you're not dealing. Can I give you an analogy? Have you heard of this notion of air supremacy? This notion of not air supremacy, ground control and air control? Mm-hmm. This notion of air control, this ground control, is fascinating to me, because, you know, when we take off in a plane, the skies are controlled by what? An air traffic controller. Mm-hmm. It's dictated by that, yes? And there's often a tower that exists, which gives greater perspective in that tower, yes? Mm-hmm. So I bring that ground control and air control up because I want us to understand that though it seems like we're limited, just like the air traffic controller, he's controlling what's above his head from the ground.
Right, right.
It's the same way that before our astronauts take off into space, they have to launch from Earth. Ain't that something? Mm-hmm. And they have to be able to generate enough power and enough gas so there's enough thrust. Is that right? In order for them to pierce through the different spheres into outer space, but they have to launch from the ground. So there's some work that we do here. This goes to this notion of contract or agreements or connections or partnerships that we have with other dimensions. You can't even get out of space, baby, unless you start from the ground. You understand? And it's the same with the air traffic controller. You can prevent collisions in the air. Mm-hmm. When you deal with that one that's controlling stuff from the ground, that's strategizing from the ground, that gives you perspective, and you take his instructions and dictations from the ground. So that's important to understand with this notion of soul contract. I'm a little bit off because I'm actually forgetting a part of the question that you asked, but I want to say, when you said that you wanted to talk about soul contracts, can I say this quickly? If we're talking about a soul contract and we're comparing it, for example, to contracts that we have in the earth, soul contracts aren't written just on regular paper. You mentioned a soul contract, which requires perhaps a different type of tablet. The ancients told us that when we meditate and when we memorize, we're actually writing on the tablets of our heart. And then one of the prophets told us that my tongue is like the pen of a ready writer. Did you hear what I said right there? That my tongue is like the pen of a ready writer. So when we're meditating, when we're decreeing, when we're making our petitions and our prayers, and when I say prayers, I'm not just talking about pleading aimlessly and uselessly. When I'm using the word prayer, I'm using the word prayer in the ancient, the old English word where we use it in the court setting. When you made your prayer to the court, you were making your what? Your request or petition to the court. Yes. So that's the context in which I'm using the word prayer, meaning that you are addressing a council, you're addressing a court. So I'm bringing that up simply to say that these contracts that some of us don't even know we entered into before we got in this plane, came to this earth realm, is often activated by what we're saying, what we're praying, what we're decreeing, these mantras that we're constantly repeating. And if we don't know this contract that perhaps we may have entered into, which I didn't initially, and if I could use myself in this example on how I came to know that these things existed, I've talked about this before, and I have to bring it up now. Your contract goes into full force when you enter the earth realm, when your mother goes into her contractions. Hence, the root word of contraction is what?
Ooh, contract.
Contract.
Ooh.
And it's written in that blood when it breaches the veil from your mother's yoni. You understand?
Yeah.
So this signals to the unseen forces and realms, hey, this particular contract that we made is in full force now. It's official now.
Talk to her, Vicki. Talk to her. Talk in the clutch.
This is important. And that one is written in blood. You understand?
In blood. Damn.
And the codes, one of the things that we have to understand with this umbilical cord that we're connected to, yes, with our mothers, is that it's just not a physical thing. It's just not a physical cord, which we talk about our bloodline, yes, and our lineage, root word of lineage is that line, yes. There's also a vibrational or a spiritual codes and information and data that comes with that. I was talking to the pillars the other day, and I was saying how when I was doing my ancestors webinar some years ago, and I was channeling some information about the umbilical cord, that's how they tell us to say that, right? The umbilical cord. As I was studying and researching and going down a very deep rabbit hole, Brother Rich, I was meditating so deep. I was coming across so many different terms. And then Spirit said to me, the umbilical cord. There's a scroll, there's a particular Bible, there's some codes that we come here with, and there's a reason I think that they intentionally wanted us to pronounce it as the umbilical cord instead of the umbilical cord, because we find out now that the scientists are actually extracting stem cells from the umbilical cord that they immediately cut. They are pulling stuff from the placenta after your woman has the baby, and they cut it and you're out of there, and they say, oh, this is hazardous stuff now. Yes, no. They're using those stem cells because those stem cells is like a blank cell that can turn into other types of cells, and that they're now saying is responsible for breakthroughs with cancers and all types of other treatments, you understand? So there's some codes, there's some data, there's some information that even naturally they're learning and extracting from the umbilical cord. And so just like there's a physical cord, you understand, there's a spiritual bloodline and cord that we come from that has information. And a lot of this for us is that intuition. Notice the word tuition in the word intuition. Notice the word tuition in the word intuition, the intuition being spiritual information without you having to use logic. Intuition, that's that inner teacher, that's that spiritual stenographer, that's that spiritual court reporter that was present during the previous proceedings before you came here. And this record, for the record, that the stenographer makes, that this court reporter, that's another name for a stenographer, yes, makes, is already on the inside of us. And some of us that were rejected from certain spiritual organizations, certain spiritual initiations, thank God, we were forced to go within. Some of us, we were forced through our rejection and isolation to hear that intuition, that tutor, that inner teacher that was present, that stenographer that was present in the proceedings that took place in the ethers before I came to the earth, that gives me inside knowledge and information where I know stuff that I don't know. And as I become more familiar with this record that already exists on the inside of me, I'm able to move in a particular way, you understand, on earth with this particular contract that I made. And for me, I know that that contract has everything to do with the work that I'm doing now on this earth, and also bringing in a new world. I know I said a whole lot right there, but anyway, please jump in with any questions.
No, I'm loving it. I feel as though now I don't know if you thought of that before, if you just downloaded that when you were talking about the umbilical cord, the biblical. Did you already?
The umbilical cord was a part of the downloads that I got during my ancestor webinar.
Okay, excellent.
But the stenographer and that part was not. That was today.
No, I love hearing your downloads. They are pure, and they are unfiltered, and it just carries a certain chi to it. Like when you talk, you have these downloads and you're talking. Like I could feel the energy in your downloads. Let me ask you this, Vicki. Let me ask you this. Oh, and by the way, Vicki has a webinar with the pills. She mentioned the pills. You have a webinar with this Sunday.
Yes. This Sunday, when in Rome, they have a regular webinar that they do, but I was so pleased to have been invited to participate with this one. And so, of course, they're going to be breaking down very amazing insight about what they're talking about, Jason, which has to do with what? The months of July, August, September, October, November. Isn't that brilliant? Just even that, Jason alone, and what's to come, and giving strategy for that. So we're going to be in the spiritual war room, and I have the high privilege of discussing the Sibyls and how the Catholic Church and other religions actually stole the Vatican and that sacerdotal seat from them. So I'll be speaking about them, the Sibyls, within the context of winning Rome. So it's going to be good.
Fire. Yeah, that is this Sunday, family. If you want to you know, sign up for that webinar, the link is, I just put it in the chat.
Oh, thank you. Is in the chat.
I just put it in the chat. I know, and make sure y'all support that webinar if you can. I know Red and Blue, their channel has been targeted lately. So it's very important that they get this webinar out, because obviously it can't be on this platform. So shout out to Red and Blue for continuing to do the work with their approach and their information. Those two brothers are very good at researching. Two good researchers, amazing researchers. We all have our gifts. They are amazing researchers. So shout out to Red and Blue, and make sure y'all sign up this Sunday to One in Rome. The link is in the chat. Let me ask you this, Vicky.
Yes.
Talking about soul contracts. And a beautiful, beautiful conversation so far. I'm absolutely loving this conversation, and I knew I would. That's why I knew I had to talk to you about this. I want to ask you, can you yearn for something that's not in your soul contract? And the reason why I ask that, because a lot of people feel as though they want things and they're not getting, they can't get it. So my thing is, can you even yearn for something that's in your soul contract, or the fact that you're yearning for it means that you have to have it, Vicky?
That's an excellent question. And I believe that some of the things that we long for is oftentimes clues to what's actually ours. And it's sometimes a symptom of the environment, perhaps, that we were in. You know, they talk about how sometimes when certain young children, for example, when they're abducted and they are with their abductors and their kidnappers for many years, that when their actual parents or when law enforcement or whomever actually locates them after many years, they actually don't want to leave.
Right.
They actually, quote unquote, long for or want to stay with the one that actually violated them. Yes. So that has to do with that particular environment. But it's possible to be placed in a new environment to where you awaken to the reality of who you are, so that you're able to long for and in fact magnetize that which is really your birthright. Yes. So to answer your question, yes, you certainly can long for something that's not necessarily good or particular to your unique purpose and destiny. But also, for the most part, I believe that when we are aligned, and even when we're not exactly aligned like we desire to be, a lot of the stuff that moves us, the impulses that we often have, tend to still be a clue to our purpose. Even the things that upset me, that angered me, was actually a clue to my destiny. Because that meant that I perhaps had a solution, you understand, to that thing that angered me. That meant that that was something that I was supposed to actually deal with. And so, so when something angers you or something upsets you, that's not necessarily something that you should immediately shun. It's often, it absolutely in every situation has everything to do with your spiritual alignment, and you getting in that spiritual lab, and with fits and starts. Yes. And I brought that up in terms of the spiritual lab, because when you're in a lab, there are a lot of smart people that have their coats on in labs and their beakers and the whole setup. But because they have a lot of head knowledge, they're there to actually figure some stuff out. Yes, they're actually there to experiment. And so that's the only way we become adept and masters of our contracts and our unique destinies, is once we get in that lab and we begin to work that thing. That's really the type of labor. In fact, that word labor is in the word laboratory. That's one of the ways that we become really good at who we're called to be, is that this thing has to be tested. You have to work your magic. You have to apply it day to day in order to become better at it. So I hope that kind of answered to a degree your question. And I want to say this sort of in alignment to that. If I could just use this, I'm a girl, right? I'm a woman, so I like to embody the knowledge and give examples. Even though I certainly am one to study, I'm big on that. But more than that, I live out the things that I teach. So one of the things I shared with you before, Brother Rich, I don't know if you remember this, is when I told you that when I was in a deep meditation, and this was over a long period of time, that there were messengers that showed up in my prayer room. And most times when they show up, they don't have wings, but these had wings. But they were standing there wing to wing. They filled my room like they were in a club. And so every wall in my room was filled from wing to wing. I was decreeing. I won't say exactly what I was decreeing, but it had to do with the world. And as I was decreeing, they appeared and they were there wing to wing, but they were taking notes. They were writing down what I was saying as dictations on legal pads. Do you remember me sharing that before? I brought that up because this was not that time that I went into a trance where I ascended and I was actually a part of an assembly in the ethers, to where the divine was sitting on the throne and he moved out the officials and said, I think I hear Vicki calling. He literally moved them out the way. I was in a trance. I wasn't asleep. It was wide open. This was actually, they came down and were taking notes to fulfill what I was decreeing. Do you understand?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's a type of contract. That's something that I was affecting in another dimension. And also because I was affecting things and praying concerning things in other states and other parts of the world, guess what that involved? Other guardians that have to do with those geographical locations and spiritual locations.
Right.
That required a different type of contract, different type of alliances, you understand, from another dimension. Now, let me say this. I had the right to command because, number one, this contract that I'm fulfilling on earth initiated in the ethers. And one of the things that I learned on earth is that it matters where a contract is initiated. Did you know that?
Oh yeah.
It matters what state and what country a contract is initiated in, because that determines the jurisdiction and the particular rules and regulations that governs it. So because my contract came from a dimension beyond earth, I get to not only fulfill what it is that I came into contract with these particular entities, I also get to call on help from another dimension to assist me in this realm. Watch this. But over time, y'all ain't ready for this part. This is what got me in a lot of trouble. And I knew I was bad because some of the energies I was dealing with over the past years that had to do with what? Local authorities, state authorities, federal authorities. Are you hearing me? Wall Street entities, high-level officials that even make no sense. You understand? For someone of my status at that particular time, but that was spiritual. Do you understand? And it wasn't just that. What I started to do over time is not long to see some angel or some other spirit. I grew in such, I'm going to say, power and confidence, even when it appeared that I was losing everything and under extraordinary warfare. I started reading the contract and enforcing certain parts and making requests to amend certain parts of the contract. You only get to that point when you start engaging spirit over time. And the way we read our particular contracts is through our meditation. It's through our spiritual engagement. That's the only way that you can know the stuff that you don't know. And I think some folks even talk about, and I don't pretend to be an expert on this, but this is the best way I can explain it, because when I was saying that I know stuff that I don't know and I was moving this way over years, I didn't know 20-something years ago, 30-something years ago, that there was a such thing as an Akashic record. You feel me? I didn't know that there was this energetic library that existed out there, you understand, somewhere, that had a whole lot of data and knowledge and intel that I could tap into. I didn't know that, but this is in essence what I was operating in. And so I just wanted to throw that out there to let you know that this is how you become more familiar with your particular contract through the law of observation. And even scientifically, they tell us that the law of observation is just when you observe something long enough, it changes the behavior of a thing. Ain't this something? When you focus or give attention, because attention is not nothing, it's actually energy, yes? But when you give a certain level of attention to something, it actually changes the behavior of a thing. So that's the reason why we become very stingy with our time. When we talk about the time that we spiritually align, we don't play and allow distractions. We don't mind folks calling us rude. You understand? Because I know that you can't break my focus because I'm trying to affect something here. And the only way that I can do that is with my what? Undivided attention. I'm affecting something that I can't see. And I know this particular thing is working. So over time is when I understood, dear brother, that I was affecting another dimension in another realm. And then when I was going through the greatest trial of my life, which took some years, having lost my property, my businesses, I was going through a divorce at the time. There was some